The nerve plexes, which are formed by the spinal nerves, have some idea that it is not a simple combination of the nerves with each other, but rather it is meant for segregation of the motor and sensory impulses from each other. If we see the spinal cord, in which the gray matter of the spinal cord, which is the collection of the body of the neurons, this is the gray matter of the spinal cord, which is the collection of the bodies of the neurons, that is divisible into three components: the dorsal horn, intermediate horn, and the ventral horn. Dorsal horn is the collection of the sensory neurons. The lateral horn is collection of the autonomic neurons, and the ventral horn is the collection of the motor neurons. Now the collection of the neuron outside the spinal cord name is given ganglia. In case of spinal cord, this ganglia name given dorsal root ganglia. It is a sensory ganglion in which the axon, they transmit their impulse to the posterior horn, which is again collection of the sensory neurons. Whereas the dendrite, they pass outside through intervertebral foramina and come out. The dendrite join with this motor root, and together they form the spinal nerve here. This spinal nerve then emerges from the intervertebral foramina. The dorsal horn, which is the further divisible into 6 types of the neurons, which are the name is given because they are present in the form of sheet, so name is given lamina. There are 6 divisions of the dorsal horn. The 1 and 2 that receive the temperature pain sensation, then 3 that receive the temperature pain, and then is a large globular head, which is the lamina 4, receive the touch, pressure, vibration impulses, and then lamina 5 and 6 that receive the proprioceptive impulses from the joint, or deep joint sensation, or myotendinous junction. So 6 sensations that is receiving through dorsal root. Dorsal root receive these impulses by dendrites, which follow the spinal nerve. They bring the sensation to dorsal root ganglia, 6 sensations, and those 6 sensations then pass on to different laminae of the posterior horn. So the sensation conveyed is the temperature and pain, then is the touch, pressure, vibration. Number 1, touch, temperature. Number 2, pain. Number 3, touch, temperature, touch, pressure, vibration, and proprioceptive. 6 sensations received from the limbs, from the skin, and that is passed on to the posterior horn. Posterior horn then, after receiving the impulses that ascend up to the brain, has ascending tracts, which terminate mostly in the thalamus, and thalamus receive all these sensory impulses, and from the thalamus they are conveyed to that is the postcentral gyrus of the cerebral cortex. Lateral horn give the autonomic fibers which follow through or pass through the anterior horn and follow the ventral root. These fibers follow the ventral root and pass on to the limb, then follow the cutaneous nerves to supply the sweat gland and erector pili muscle which responsible for erection of hairs. Then come to the ventral horn. Ventral horn is the motor horn which give the motor impulses or give their axons which pass as ventral root. So ventral root is the collection of the axons of the anterior horn and that follow the ventral root or form the ventral root which join with the dendrites of the dorsal root ganglia. Together they form spinal nerve. One thing important is in the anterior horn is there are the two groups of the muscles, extensor and flexors. Now, extensor that pass a separate group as shown is this line, that is the green line, and second is the flexor, that red line. These two lines indicate that flexor and extensor impulses they are separately pass from the anterior horn and their control from the brain is also separate. If the flexor impulse is passing, extensor is inhibited by the brain, and if extensor impulse is passing, the flexor impulse is inhibited. So motor root or ventral root, dorsal root is sensory root. Now ventral root, which is the motor, carry the two modalities, or although the motor fiber are same for extensors and flexors, but the flexors are that is separately supplied and dorsal root they are separately supplied so that they can cooperate with each other. If flexors are active, extensors are inactive, and if extensors are active, flexors are inactive. So now it from the very beginning, from the spinal cord anterior horn, their control is separate and that pass through the ventral. They follow this dotted line is the autonomic fibers, which are the sympathetic fibers and pass along with this ventral root, because ventral root is only the root which is leaving the spinal cord, whereas the dorsal root actually entering into spinal cord, carrying the sensory message to the gray matter of the spinal cord. So exit route is the ventral route through which the autonomic fiber also leave. So finally, the dorsal root, which is the dendrites of the ganglia, combine with ventral root, which has the we can say three modalities. One is the flexor, second is the extensors, both are motor, and third is the autonomic fiber. By this combination, spinal nerve is formed. Spinal nerve as soon as come out through the intervertebral foramina and divide into the dorsal ramus and ventral ramus. The dorsal ramus will be consist of the sensory fibers, motor fiber, autonomic fiber, whereas the ventral rami also receive motor fiber, sensory fiber, and autonomic fiber. So dorsal ramus and ventral ramus differ from the ventral root and dorsal root in a sense that dorsal root is only sensory, ventral root is motor plus autonomic. They are different, but in this case the dorsal ramus has three modalities: sensory, motor, autonomic. Similarly, venter ramus also has three modalities, that is the motor, sensory, and autonomic. The dorsal ramus supply the muscles on the back of vertebral column. There are long muscles like latissimus dorsi, rectus spinae, and others, the multifidus. So that supply the muscle, and sensory fibers supply the skin over these muscles, which is covering this muscle of the vertebral column. They are long muscles responsible for uh, extension of the vertebral column. The ventral ramus that form the brachial plexus in case of upper limb, that form the lumbar plexus in the lower limb, and these ventral rami form the sacral plexus in the lower limb. So when we talk about the lumbar plexus, it is the made up from ventral rami, which has three modalities: motor. If we say motor, then it is extensor and flexor both. Then autonomic, number two, and number three is the general sensory impulses from the skin of the limb. So they carry three. Idea of these ventral rami of the, say, we say in the in case of the lumbar plexus, contribution is ventral rami of the T12, L1, L2, L3, L4, and L5. So these rami, they form the, although the L5 is contributing into the sacral plexus, but the special contribution T12 to L4 ventral rami. Now they they are the forming a plexus. Why need of plexus? If we need of that, plexus is meant for now separation of these impulses, motor and sensory. The motor and sensory impulses, autonomic fiber follow the sensory nerves, whereas the motor fiber supply the muscles. Motor mean that is the muscle which supply the muscles, and sensory supply the skin covering it, as well as the bones and the ligaments of the joint, synovial membrane, and others structure which are contributing in the articular cartilage and other bony ends, that is supplied by the sensory. Those structure which are not moving, supplied by sensory. Those moving like muscles contracting, supplied by motor. If we see over here, T12 ventral ramus, L1 ventral ramus, they combine or give a branch which becomes single. Then it divide into the, that is the V1 and V1 and V2, two ventral branches are divisions, what we say. It is not the rami, it is the divisions. Previously it was the rami. Before that there was a root. Roots is inside the spinal cord as vertebral column, whereas the outside is the rami. Then onward there is a divisions, ventral division and dorsal division. This is idea of this whole plexus is to separate the motor and sensory impulses. So this one division after combination of T12 and L1 is that further divide into two branches, iliohypogastric and ilioinguinal, that carrying the motor fibers to transverse abdominis and internal oblique, like iliohypogastric, which give fibers to transverse abdominis. They are motor fibers, whereas the posterolateral gluteal region and suprapubic Then suprapubic skin is sensory, that is sensory fiber to the posterolateral gluteal region and the suprapubic skin and proximal medial side of thigh, that is the suprapubic region, whereas the motor fiber are to the transverse abdominis and internal oblique. Second vein is the ilioinguinal, which supply the proximal medial side of thigh as well as the transverse abdominis and internal oblique muscles. This is the distribution of the first component after combination of the T12 and L1. Second is make a combination with L2 fibers and to form the genitofemoral nerve. Genitofemoral nerve supply the skin of the scrotum and the cremaster muscle, which is the that is the muscle which is supplied by this. L2, which is the L2 ramus, venter ramus, because we said that all are venter ramus. These are all venter ramus. So venter ramus, which is the further divisible into one division which join to form genitofemoral, second division join with the L3. It join with L3, one combination from L3 also. Together they form the accessory obturator nerve. Accessory obturator. The obturator, accessory obturator supply the adductor muscles of thigh. This is the this second combination from the second part, which is the this black is shown is the motor component or the part which supply the lateral cutaneous nerve of thigh. It join with the L3 and L2, that together L2 and L3 they form the lateral cutaneous nerve of thigh. We supply the lateral side of the thigh, cutaneous supply. Then L3 combination with L2, this one L3 and this L1, that is coming down combined combination. Then L4 give a division which join with this, together they form the femoral nerve which supply the quadriceps muscles, femoral nerve. It also supply the front of thigh, cutaneous supply to the front of thigh, so sensory fibers. Then is the L4 we have talked about, that join with one division from L2. This is the L2 division, that is forming the obturator nerve, whereas the one division from L3 together with the L4 forming the accessory obturator nerve. So major nerve is the lumbar plexus is femoral nerve, and we supply the extensor muscles, that is supplying the extensors of the knee joint, which are the quadriceps muscle. So major contribution of the lumbar plexus is for extensors, that is the extensor fiber which we said that is coming primarily from the ventral horn, flexor and extensors. So these extensors they pass on, extensor derived from the L2, L3, L4 to form the femoral nerve. We supply the extensor. Now the ventral rami of the L4, L4 we join with L5, that is the L5 join with, it form the uh, L4 combination, that is the L4 that give two divisions that divide into two, this one and this one. Now one division from the L4, one division from the L5, one division from the S1 and one division from the S2, then is the S3. They combine to form tibial nerve. Tibial nerve mostly supply the flexors of the lower limb. That is the mostly the muscles on the back of leg, and the second is the dorsal division, what we say, that is the L4, L5, S1, S2. Together they form the common peroneal nerve, which supply the extensor compartment of the front of leg and peroneal muscles. Common peroneal further divided into the superficial peroneal and deep peroneal. Now deep peroneal supply the extensor compartment of the leg, and peroneal muscle supplied by the superficial peroneal nerve. It also these nerves supply the sensory supply to the dorsum of the foot. Now common peroneal and tibial derived from these sources, they get together to form the sciatic nerve. Sciatic nerve is formed by these combination, which come out through the greater sciatic foramen onto the back of the gluteal region and back of thigh. Now from this, some fibers, motor fibers, which are derived from the this L4, L5 and S1 to form the superior gluteal nerve. Similarly, some fiber derived from the S1, S2, S2, this one, S3, S2, S1, S2, and L5. L5, S1, S2. They form the inferior gluteal nerve. There are fibers from the S2 and derived from the S3 and some from the S4 that form the pudendal nerve. That is the pudendal nerve. Similarly, these fibers derived from the same combination tibial fiber from that supply the obturator internus and superior gemellus. These are short lateral rotator of the hip joint, short lateral rotator. Similarly, another branch is this one is the nerve to quadratus femoris inferior gemelli. So short lateral rotator of the hip joint receiving from this source, that is the fibers which are supplied. Next is the fracture of the femoral neck. Femoral neck fractures are especially common. Femoral neck fractures of the femoral neck. Femoral neck fractures are especially common in individuals more than 60 years, especially in women, due to the osteoporosis. Fracture of the neck are intracapsular because the capsule of the hip joint is covering whole of the neck, and that fracture occurs. Fracture of the neck cause lateral rotation of the lower limb, and it often disrupt the blood supply to the head of femur. You have seen in the femur, in the neck of the femur, that multiple vascular foramina are present in the neck, through which the blood vessels that pass on to the head. So you can see again on the femoral neck where the multiple vascular foramina are present. Most of the blood to the head and neck through these vascular foramina which are present in the neck is supplied by medial circumflex femoral artery. Medial circumflex femoral artery. This is also one of the important MCQ, that what is the main supply of the head of femur. That is the medial circumflex femoral artery. In the femoral neck fracture, artery to the ligament of head, there is a one artery which is a branch from the obturator artery, also supply the head. So ligament of head is which is attached to the fovea of the femur, carry the blood supply to the head of femur, and which is the may be the only remaining source of blood to the proximal segment. After fracture, this may be the only source which is supplying the head. This artery is inadequate for maintaining the femoral head. So finally, fragment may undergo aseptic vascular necrosis, death of the head occur, tissue death. Dislocation, so only treatment is the replacement of the femur head. Displacement of the hip joint, or dislocation of the hip joint. Congenital dislocation of the hip joint is common. It is bilateral in half of cases. That newborn, that is the born with the congenital dislocation. In this case, femoral head is not properly located in the acetabulum. Inability to abduct, this word is the abduct the thigh is characteristic of the congenital dislocation. That is the thigh is abducted, which is the characteristic of congenital dislocation. Affected limb is shorter due to superior, it looks shorter, it becomes shorter due to superior dislocation of the femoral head as compared to the normal. There is another condition what we term the Trendelenburg sign. Here is the one thing which is the gluteus medius and minimus muscle, say of the right side. They hold the pelvis on the left side when left foot is off the ground. Now that hold it. It doesn't allow it to sag down or to dip down because the right side muscles they keep the pelvis straight and does not allow the opposite side of the pelvis to dip down when the left limb is off the ground. So if it is paralyzed, then there is a tendency to fall, and person avoid to fall on the left side, bend toward the right side to hold the pelvis in position. And when the foot left is on the ground, right is off, then that bend on the left side. If the person is coming and bending on, say, one side to other, that is the Trendelenburg sign. Hip tend to drop on one side during walking. Acquired dislocation of the hip joint is uncommon. Acquired. Normally, dislocation of hip joint doesn't occur due to strong ligaments. Dislocation occur in automobile accident when the hip is flexed, adducted, and medially rotated. If you are driving a car, then this is the normal position which is kept while the driver is sitting on the seat. That hip is flexed, adducted, and bit medially rotated. That is the usual position while driving a car. So the posterior dislocation of the hip joint. Now we can say that if a head-on collision occur in the of a car, then the knee or the lower end of the femur hit the dashboard and put the head out of the acetabulum by the injury. So posterior dislocation of hip joint most common. A head-on collision that causes knee to strike the dashboard may dislocate hip when head is forced out of acetabulum. Joint capsule ruptures and allowing the femoral head to pass posterior margin of acetabulum causes shortening and medial rotating the limb due to close relationship of sciatic nerve to the hip joint. It may be injured. Nerve is also injured. Anterior dislocation of hip joint it occurred due to violent injury that forces the hip into extension, abduction, and lateral rotation. In this case, femoral head is inferior to the acetabulum. Often acetabular margin is fractured. Another thing which is important is we determine the sex from the skeleton. And there are some bones which are very helpful or useful in determining the sex from the, say, if a person dies, then that is buried or murdered, which is then buried somewhere by a person who killed him. So we put out the skeleton that that is pointed out that that person was buried 6 months ago by me, or the that is the killed by the person. So that skeleton is brought about. That is exhumation occur. Exhumation is done to bring the skeleton to determine the sex and age of the person, so that the pointed person is correct or not. In order to the hip bone, which is very helpful in sex differences. In addition, the skull and mandible, that is also helpful in determining the sex. These are the two bones which are very useful to determine the sex. So one should know the sex differences in the hip bone, which is very important. One is the male and female difference. Iliac crest. Iliac crest more rubed, curves medially. That is the inward curved होती male में. At its anterior end, most acute, which means the iliac crest is curved and medially curved. When it is curved, the iliac blades are not so vertical. So this iliac fossa will be deep. Due to curve of the iliac crest, iliac fossa will be deep. So in case of male, the important thing regarding the iliac crest is it is curved and iliac fossa is deep. So, so pecten pubis is not so vertical. Whereas in female, the curve of iliac crest is less acute. Iliac blades are more vertical, straight. So iliac fossa are shallow. Pecten pubis or iliopectineal line is more vertical. Now keep in mind the sex differences in the hip bone. One thing important is that female pelvises make broad and facilitate the childbirth. That is meant for. Every point is for the facilitation of the passage of the head of fetus through the pelvis. Whereas the male pelvis is not meant for that. It is only to hold the structures in it or protect the pelvic structures. So whole of the idea of the female pelvis is differ from male is that it facilitates the birth of the head of the, so iliac fossa should be shallow so that head can easily pass instead of curved the iliac crest. The stabulum is acetabular fossa is large. Its diameter is almost equal to the diameter of its anterior rim pubic symphysis. If you measure the distance from the pubic symphysis to the anterior margin of the acetabulum, this is the one diameter. Second, you take the diameter of the acetabulum cup. Both are equal. Acetabular diameter is usually less than this distance. Actually, the anterior wall is larger in female to facilitate the passage of the head of fetus. So the it is the acetabulum diameter although is less than the if you measure from the pubic symphysis to anterior margin of the acetabulum, because the anterolateral wall of the pelvic cavity is wider in female. Anterior pelvic wall is greater in height. As a whole, male pelvis is greater in height, whereas the female pelvis is wider in the transverse diameter, transversely wider, and height of the the in the male is the more. So it is greater in height in male anterior pelvic wall. Symphysis, the adjoining part of pelvis and ischium, is less in height, so that the subpubic angle is wider. Obturator foramen, when it become height is more, so oval shape due to more height. Obturator. Because the female pelvis is broader, so obturator foramen is triangular in shape. Pelvic arch or angle. The subpubic angle which is taken below the pubic symphysis between the two ischiopubic rami. Angle between the two ischiopubic rami below the or lower end of the pubic symphysis. Here the diameter is 50 to 60 degree. Pubic tubercles are closely associated. In female it is 80 to 85 degree. So pubic tubercles are greater separately because the distance between the ischiopubic rami is more for passage of the head of fetus. So that angle is more wider, subpubic angle, than as compared to the male, which is the narrow. Because height is more, female pelvis is broader, so angle is also broader, 80 to 85 degree. Ischiopubic rami are roughened, everted area for attachment of crus penis, whereas the ischiopubic rami are highly built and narrow near symphysis. Ischial spine close together or inturned inward, whereas the ischial spine wide apart for facilitation of head of fetus because they are wider. They are closer in female. Greater sciatic foramen, comparatively narrow 50 degree, and greater sciatic notch near right angle, wider 75 degree. Because the notches are wider because of the more width of the pelvis, because more height of the pelvis, so 50 degree. The general difference, pelvic cavity longer conical, more height. Pelvic cavity shorter and more cylindrical. Sacrum bone evenly curved in male, whereas the less curved curvature is more of first and second sacral segment. That is the less curvature more of 1 and 2, and S3 to S5 level, sacral index 115 and 105.